They lost control. Silver didn't just break 65, it shattered the rigged system holding it down for decades. We're talking about the most manipulated asset on Earth, and today, that dam finally cracked. The COMEX is down to just 31 million deliverable ounces. Pension funds are front-running Wall Street, sovereigns are hoarding metal off exchange, and the banks? They're trapped in a $2.6 billion short position, bleeding by the hour. This isn't a price breakout. This is financial warfare. 65.80 is no longer resistance. It's the trigger point. And now, it's game on. 10. The vaults are empty, and the COMEX is running on fumes. Let me paint you a picture that no one on CNBC will show you. The COMEX vaults, the very heart of the global silver pricing mechanism, are bleeding metal at an unprecedented pace. If you've ever wondered where the silver actually comes from when someone demands physical delivery, it's here. The registered category is what matters. That's the silver that is actually available for delivery. Not the stuff that's earmarked for others, not the eligible reserves that are technically off-limits. Just the real, unspoken for, ready-to-ship metal. Well, guess what? As of this week, registered silver on COMEX sits below 32 million ounces. To put that in context, Tesla alone is estimated to need over 100 million ounces annually for EV batteries, solar production, and grid-level storage. That's one company, 1 year, more than triple what COMEX has on hand for the entire global market. This isn't a drip, this is a hemorrhage. And here's where the $65.80 floor becomes a trapdoor for the banks. Every ounce requested for delivery at this price slices through a limited pile of physical inventory. Once the illusion cracks, once it becomes clear there simply isn't enough metal to back the paper, the game is over. Last month alone, over 5 million ounces left the COMEX vaults. That's the fastest drain rate we've seen since the 2020 pandemic supply shock. If that trend continues, the registered pile could be gone in 6 months or less. But it gets worse. The LBMA in London, supposedly the backup reservoir for global silver, has quietly dropped to under 850 million ounces, and insiders estimate that only 10 to 15% of that is actually available for industrial or investment use. The rest? Tied up in lease contracts, rehypothecated, or simply not for sale at any price. So when you hear $65.80 is the new floor, understand what that means. It's not just a price. It's a ticking clock. Above this line, every ounce bought tightens the noose. The banks aren't just trapped by bad trades, they're cornered by math. Physical inventory is vanishing. And when the last ounce gets claimed, you won't see a slow drift higher. You'll see a face-ripping gap up as buyers scramble for metal in a system that can't deliver it anymore. 65.80 isn't a ceiling. It's the warning siren. And right. Now the red lights are flashing. 9. Sovereign nations are buying, and they're not telling anyone. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you heard a central bank announce a massive silver purchase? Exactly. You haven't. Not because they're not doing it, but because they don't want you to know. Here's what's really happening behind closed doors. Sovereign accumulation is underway, and it's being done through proxies, intermediaries, and off-exchange deals. Why? Because silver is moving from being treated like a commodity to being treated like a strategic resource. You think gold is the only metal countries are hoarding in secret? Think again. Multiple satellite images in 2025 have confirmed increased activity at refining and storage facilities in China, Turkey, and India. Regions where silver imports are surging without explanation in the customs data. Let me give you a number. India imported over 70 million ounces of silver in just the last quarter, more than double the quarterly average for the last 5 years. Where's it going? Not to retail? Not to jewelry? Analysts tracking delivery data can't find a retail buyer base that large. The answer? State-linked industrial reserves. Because governments are realizing something that Wall Street is trying to ignore, silver isn't just for coins and necklaces anymore. It's the foundation of electrification, of solar panels, of 5G infrastructure, of electric vehicles. And in a world where China has publicly declared it wants to dominate the global solar supply chain by 2027, you better believe they're not leaving silver to the open market. At 65.80, these governments aren't panicking, they're celebrating, because they've been front-running this breakout for months, quietly loading up while the Western financial media told you silver was stagnating. And now that the breakout is here, the panic isn't among governments, it's among the banks that sold the metal to them. These are not short-term traders looking for 10% gains. These are sovereign buyers who want to own silver the way you'd own farmland or oil reserves? Forever. And guess what? When the retail market finally figures this out, there won't be any left. Sovereign demand is the silent black hole sucking metal out of the system, and the chart at 65.80 is just a reflection of what's already gone. By the time it hits $80, it'll be too late to get in. The nations have already eaten your lunch. 8. Basel III. Just lit the fuse. Silver is now monetary. Again, everyone's looking at silver as an industrial metal, and they're right, partially. But there's another angle that almost no one is talking about, and it's the real reason this floor at 65.80 might be the beginning of something seismic. Basel III reclassified silver-backed assets for Tier 1 treatment under certain new interpretations being trialed in Europe and Asia. That's right. As of Q4 2025, multiple mid-tier central banks have begun treating fully allocated silver, real, deliverable metal stored in secure vaults, as part of their liquidity reserve requirements. This is the kind of legal accounting change that doesn't make headlines, but shifts the entire tectonic plate under the financial system. You may remember when gold was reclassified as a Tier 1 asset back in 2019. That seemingly small change triggered a 5-year bull run that doubled the price and caused central banks to become net buyers for the first time in decades. Now imagine the same thing, but applied to an asset with a market 1/20th the size of gold, and with far more industrial usage. That's silver. And that's why we're seeing the floor rise. The banks are being cornered not just by margin calls, but by regulatory shifts that now make silver a weapon for liquidity defense. If you're a bank in Turkey, or Argentina, or even Italy, and your currency is wobbling, what do? You buy silver. Not futures, not ETFs, real metal, because now it qualifies under your reserve requirements. And the implications of this are massive. It means silver is returning to its ancient role as money. Not speculation, not jewelry, money. When sovereigns, pension funds, and now banks begin hoarding silver for legal reasons, the free float disappears. This isn't retail-driven, it's structural, it's systemic, and it creates a chronic shortage. So when you look at that $65.80 price on your screen, understand, it's not a number, it's a policy shift, a re-rating of what silver is, and the market is just beginning to catch up. Once this hits mainstream financial press, which it will when Basel IV codifies it, $65.80 will look like the greatest discount of your lifetime. The door is open, and the big boys are stepping through it while retail is still asleep. 7. AI and the silver arms race. You didn't see coming. Most people think the demand for silver is driven by solar panels and coins. But what if I told you the next megadriver is artificial intelligence? That's right. AI chips and next-generation quantum computing systems are now emerging as major silver consumers, and no one is pricing it in. Here's what the public doesn't know yet. High-speed AI servers and advanced photonic systems rely heavily on silver's unmatched conductivity to maintain signal integrity across micro-scale interconnects. The copper wiring inside traditional data centers is reaching a heat and resistance ceiling. AI clusters require speed, efficiency, and minimal signal loss. That means silver is no longer optional. It's becoming mission critical. Don't take my word for it. ASML, NVIDIA, and TSMC have already started sourcing silver directly from refineries for proprietary chip cooling and laser etching systems. These are not small applications. We're talking about hundreds of grams per wafer batch, across tens of thousands of wafers per month. Multiply that across just the top. 5 AI data centers under construction right now, and you're looking at millions of ounces per year, per site. This isn't even counting the grid expansion required to power these AI facilities. which, by the way, also requires silver-intensive solar and wind infrastructure. It's a demand Ouroboros. AI needs silver to exist, and silver demand grows as AI scales. That's a closed loop that only points one direction: up. Now layer in geopolitics. China's recent AI development race has triggered a tech arms race with the US, the EU, and India. All of them are trying to build AI infrastructure on a scale we've never seen. But guess what? You can't build a single AI server rack without silver-plated high-speed connectors, advanced thermal regulators, and increasingly silver-based photonic circuits. This is not theory. This is happening now. And no one has modeled it into the demand curve yet. Not Goldman Sachs, not JP Morgan. But when they do, the supply-demand mismatch at 6580 will look like a bad joke. AI is eating silver alive, and it hasn't even hit the public radar. So when you see 6580, don't think expensive. Think pre-price discovery. Because when Wall Street finally wakes up to the fact that every AI chip is a silver sinkhole, the repricing will be violent. You don't get a warning bell. This is it. 6. Silver mine supply. Just peaked, and nobody's ready for the collapse. Here's the part the analysts never want to talk about. You can track all the charts, follow all the flows, analyze all the COMEX data you want, but none of it matters if the physical supply chain breaks. And guess what? It just did. Global silver mine output for 2025 is now confirmed at 823 million ounces, according to the latest data from Metals Focus. That's not only below expectations, it's the third year in a row of flat or declining production. Let me be clear. The world has officially entered peak silver. You might say, well, 823 million ounces still sounds like a lot. It's not. It barely covers half the projected industrial demand for 2026, which the Silver Institute now forecasts at over 1.2 billion ounces thanks to solar, EVs, semiconductors, and the AI boom we talked about earlier. That doesn't even include investment demand. Coins, bars, ETFs, or central bank accumulation. We are now running a global silver deficit of at least 400 million ounces per year. That's a supply shortfall the size of the entire COMEX registered inventory every year. Now here's where it gets terminal. Silver isn't like oil. You don't just turn on a new tap. Over 70% of global silver production comes as a byproduct from mining zinc, lead, and copper. That means you can't just boost silver production by itself. If base metals slow down, silver output collapses. And that's exactly what's happening. Copper mines are under pressure from falling grades, permitting delays, and political instability in places like Peru and Chile. Zinc and lead are facing shutdowns from environmental regulations across Europe and Australia. That's the fuse burning at both ends. And new primary silver mines? They're not coming online. The average time from discovery to production is 10 to 15 years, and the investment just isn't there. Exploration budgets are down, the big miners are pulling back, and no sane company wants to spend $500 million building a mine if the spot price is controlled by a corrupt paper market. But now that we've smashed $65.80 and exposed the cracks, that changes, but not overnight. The damage is done. So here's the bottom line. Supply is maxed out, and demand is exponential. $65.80 is not a top. It's the starting line of a commodity supercycle. And the miners can't save you. They are too late, too underfunded, and too constrained by years of price suppression. The breakout has begun, but the metal isn't coming to market, which means the price has to go vertical just to find balance. The fuse is lit. 5. The $3 trillion pension bomb that's about to chase silver. You want to know who's really behind the next leg of this rally? It's not Reddit. It's not retail. It's not even the sovereigns. It's the pension funds. And they're coming in with a $3 trillion tidal wave of capital. Let me explain. For decades, pensions and endowments were limited to conservative allocations, bonds, blue-chip stocks, and a sliver of gold. Silver was considered too volatile, too fringe, too industrial, but that rulebook just went up in smoke because the 60-40 portfolio is dead, and they know it. Pensions have been bleeding for years. The average U.S. state pension is now under 70% funded, And that's with inflated equity valuations and artificially low inflation numbers. In reality, many of them are functionally insolvent. And when inflation hit 9% in 2022, they panicked. Suddenly, they needed real assets, hard stores of value that could protect capital over decades. Gold got the first wave of attention. But now, silver is next. Why? Because silver outperforms gold in inflationary spikes. Look at the 1970s. Gold went up 700%, silver went up 1,000%. Silver is the high beta trade. It's the volatility they need to catch up on performance. And after sitting out the last decade, pension CIOs are under pressure. The consultants are changing the models. The allocation recommendations are shifting. We're hearing whispers that just a 1% global pension reallocation into silver would require over 800 million ounces, nearly the entire annual mine output. Now ask yourself, where are they going to get that silver? It's not in the ETFs. It's not in the COMEX. It's not sitting in dealer vaults. It doesn't exist, which means they have to buy what's available and bid against each other to do it. This is about to become a game of musical chairs with billion-dollar players and only a few chairs. And guess what? They've already started. CalPERS, the biggest pension fund in the U.S., just authorized its first direct purchase of silver contracts, confirmed by insider reports last week. The door is open, and once one pension fund breaks rank, the rest follow like lemmings. They can't afford to be left holding depreciating dollars. So when you see silver at 65 or 80, don't think you're late. You're early. You're ahead of the pensions. But not for long. 4. BRICS. Just declared war on the dollar, and silver is collateral damage. You want to understand why $65.80 is just the beginning? Because the dollar just got attacked from the front, the back, and both flanks. And silver is caught in the crossfire, but in the best way possible. The BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, has officially announced a timeline for launching a commodity-backed trade settlement system. Not in 2030, not in theory, but by mid-2026, according to statements made last month at the BRICS Plus Summit in Johannesburg. This is not a drill. The petrodollar is dying. And when the dollar loses its hegemony over global trade, capital doesn't just disappear, it moves. It moves fast. And where does it go? Into hard assets with no counterparty risk. First gold, then silver, then everything else. But silver has something even gold doesn't: industrial versatility and affordability. BRICS nations don't just want to store wealth, they want to build infrastructure, tech, energy grids, and AI systems. Silver is the crossover metal. It's both store and tool, and that makes it central to the de-dollarization playbook. Let me break it down. If China and Russia settle oil in yuan and back that with a basket of commodities, including silver, the global pricing system breaks. COMEX becomes irrelevant. The dollar pricing model becomes obsolete. Instead of New York setting the price of silver through synthetic leverage, Shanghai and Moscow will set it based on physical scarcity and geopolitical leverage. And guess what? Those nations have been stockpiling for years. The ramifications are historic. Every ounce of silver that BRICS nations absorb is one less ounce available to defend the paper price. And if those nations demand physical settlement for trade deals, say silver for oil contracts or silver-backed bonds, the global float collapses even faster. At 65.80, the market is still assuming the dollar is king. But the chessboard has flipped. The kings are leaving the table. And silver is being weaponized as the ultimate neutral reserve. Not fiat, not crypto, not debt, metal. The war has already started. You just don't see the tanks. You see the yield curves. You see the shadow inventories. You see silver at 65.80 refusing to go lower, even as the dollar index bounces. That's not noise. That's a signal. The signal that the monetary order is changing, and silver is the bridge between the old world and the new. You don't want to be under that bridge when it collapses. You want to be on top of it, surfing the wave. 3. The Great Rehypothecation Collapse. 100 claims for every ounce. You ever wonder why the price of silver was stuck below $30 for a decade while demand exploded and inventories fell? The answer is the dirtiest secret in modern finance: Rehypothecation. That's when a bank sells the same ounce of silver, not once, not twice, but over and over again to multiple parties, all of whom think they own it. It's not illegal, it's just shadowy. And now, that system is collapsing in real time. Let's get specific. The LBMA's latest data estimates that for every 1 ounce of physical silver in London, there are between 80 and 100 open claims on it. Let that sink in. That means if 100 investors walk in tomorrow to redeem their silver, 99 of them walk away with nothing but a wire transfer and a sorry note. This system only works if nobody redeems. But after the breakout above $65, guess what started happening? Redemptions. Big ones. Quiet ones. Institutional ones. And that's when the fuse was lit. This is why you're seeing the price surge, even as volume thins out. Because the system is built on a lie of abundance, a digital hallucination of supply. Banks used this illusion to sell paper silver by the billions. ETF managers used it to back unallocated accounts with promises instead of bars. Brokers let clients own silver that never existed. And now, when just a tiny percentage of investors demand delivery, the whole thing shudders. You think the banks are buying silver at $65.80 because they like the charts? No. They're buying because they have no choice. The moment those redemptions hit, they scramble to secure metal to honor contracts they never had the inventory to support. And it's not just defensive, it's survival. If a major fund tries to call bluff on one of these ETF structures and the metal isn't there, lawsuits follow, reputations burn, regulators get involved. The entire credibility of the bullion market could implode. That's the hidden risk behind $65 to $80. It's not a price. It's a reckoning. The math doesn't work anymore. The fractional reserve silver system is breaking, and the cover-up can't hold if even 5% of holders demand delivery. And let me be crystal clear, this is already happening. Vault audits are delayed, settlement times are extending, premiums are rising while spot consolidates. These are signs of internal panic. The system is cracking. And when it breaks, it won't be a slow decline. It'll be a cascade failure, where every claim gets repriced to the real world. At $70, $90, $200, whatever the true market clearing price is when you remove the lies. Buckle up. 2. Silver is quietly replacing the bond market. This is the part no one understands, not even most money managers. While the world screams about inflation, yield curves, and rate hikes, a silent substitution is taking place behind the curtain. Silver is replacing sovereign bonds as the go-to collateral of last resort. Sound crazy? It's already happening. And once the institutional floodgates open, $65.80 will look like pre-game pricing. Let me explain. Bonds have traditionally served as collateral in the global financial system. You want to borrow money? You post treasuries? You want to secure a loan? You pledge sovereign debt. But that system depends on one thing: trust in the currency behind those bonds. And right now, trust is collapsing. The US 10-year is yielding below real inflation. Japan's bond market is a zombie. Germany's bonds are in negative territory when adjusted for purchasing power. Bonds are becoming unusable as real-world collateral. Enter silver. Real. Tangible. Liquid. And now, thanks to recent changes in Swiss and Singaporean banking rules, eligible as Tier 1 collateral for institutional repos and structured loans. This is not theory. In October 2025, a private Swiss clearinghouse settled a $350 million collateralized loan using allocated silver instead of bonds. The transaction cleared faster, carried lower counterparty risk, and retained value in a way fiat never can. Since then, at least 4 other institutions have followed suit. Why does this matter? Because silver isn't just a bet on price anymore. It's a monetary instrument, the same way U.S. bonds were treated for 80 years. And this is why banks, yes, even the same banks that shorted silver for decades, are now buying it. Because they need it. They need it to pledge, to settle, to prove solvency in a world where fiat paper is melting and the bond market is radioactive. The big shift hasn't hit the headlines yet, but it's moving fast. Hedge funds are already modeling silver's role in replacing a portion of the bond market's $120 trillion pool. If even 1% of that capital rotates into physical silver as collateral, that's $1.2 trillion in demand, which at today's prices would require 18 billion ounces of silver. That's over 20 years of global mine supply. Let that math destroy your sense of stability. This is the hidden tsunami behind $65.80. It's not about speculative profit. It's about systemic reallocation. Silver is being dragged out of the commodity basement and placed on the monetary pedestal. And if you're not positioned now, you may never catch it again. Because once it replaces bonds and even a small part of the system, the supply-demand curve snaps forever. The train is leaving. And the banks? They're already on board. 1. This is the end game. Silver is the anti-asset in a world of liabilities. We've made it to the top. This is the final piece of the puzzle. Why are banks, those same institutions that mocked silver for decades, suddenly buying like their lives depend on it? Why is 6580 holding like reinforced concrete while every dip gets bought in seconds? Because we're not just watching a market shift, we're watching a systemic inversion. Silver isn't just an asset anymore. It's becoming the anti-asset, the antidote to a world drowning in liabilities. Let me break it down. The global economy sits on over $305 trillion in debt. That number is so large it's meaningless to most people. But here's what matters. All of that debt is someone else's asset. Pensions, banks, funds, governments, they all hold promises. IOUs, debentures, mortgages, bonds, and those promises are now colliding with reality. Inflation eats the real yield. Rates spike and crash credit markets. Currencies devalue, and suddenly those promises are worth less. Or worthless. That's where silver comes in. Because silver isn't a promise. It's not a liability. It's not a digital entry or a structured product. It is matter. Mass. Energy stored in metal, no counterparty, no central bank, no bankruptcy court, just weight. And in a world built on layers of fake wealth, that weight becomes priceless. This is what the banks are realizing. The same way they rushed into gold after 2008, they're now crawling back to silver, because it's the only form of wealth not yet repriced for the collapse. At $65.80, silver is still cheaper than most mid-cap stocks. It's still cheaper than farmland, cheaper than art, cheaper than wine. But in terms of liability cleansing power, it is unmatched. You can't bail in silver. You can't print it. You can't freeze it or sanction it or default on it. You either have it or you don't. That's why every sell-off is shallow. That's why physical premiums are rising. That's why vaults are getting calls from billionaires, family offices, and yes, even central banks who said they'd never touch silver. Because in the final stage of fiat collapse, it's not about return on capital. It's about return of capital. And silver, real, physical, in-your-hand silver, is the safest exit left. You made it this far because you saw the cracks early. Now you know the full story. The gamma squeeze, the vault drain, the sovereign accumulation, the physical-industrial bifurcation. And now, the end game. A complete repricing of what silver is and what it means. Not a trade, not a hedge, but the core of the new monetary order. Hold fast. 65.80 is not a price. It's a pivot in history.